Welcome to Top 5, a show where we count things down from number 5 all the way to number 1. And we are so happy that you are here with us this week because just for you, another movie Top 5. This week on the show,
Just
underrated.
For you, Damien.
I mean, it could be. I don't know if I would count. I don't know if I would count The Omen as one of the movies in our top 5 underrated action movies. But I suppose if you are looking at, slates of glass sliding down and chopping off your head, right, or a iron spike coming in and piercing you, and then you get struck by lightning as action, maybe. Also, spoilers. Also, Zach on Film final episode. By the way, Zach has 3 kids now, so each one of them has a little 6 on their forehead. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about this week. Matthew, what do you have for your number 5 underrated action movie?
Well, underrated is always kind of a pain point for me because I don't know what underrated means in a lot of cases, and so I was thinking.
So typically, underrated means that it's really good and a lot of people didn't see it. And that's typically where you get this cult classic status for a lot of films.
Right.
It could be that it was reviewed very low, but today, in the world of tomato meters and all that other stuff, reviews probably don't matter. But if you were looking at a Siskel and Ebert and they were like, wow, nobody should go to this movie, and then suddenly everyone's like, no, this is a fantastic movie, that would be an underrated movie.
Well, if I were to say to you that there's a movie out there that features Ernie Reyes Jr., features 3-time heavyweight champion of the world, Kevin Nash, features Corey Feldman, David Warner, who had his head cut off by a piece of glass trying to fight Damien. It has all of these things and the greatest actor of our time, Mr. Frank Welker. Would you say to me, is that an underrated movie? Because I would say to you, yes. And it also has a turtle fighting with wieners. And I'm talking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, The Secret of the Ooze, which opens with
Go Ninja, go.
Exactly. But it opens with a wonderful sequence of Michelangelo fighting a bunch of thugs. I don't remember if they're Foot Clan members or just general criminals, but fighting them with salamis in a deli. And I don't know if it was an attempt. I don't know if they're trying to parody, violence and silliness and all of these people talking about how if you hit someone with these bow staffs or with these sais, you would kill people. And so they're like, okay, well, we're going to just completely throw that out and we're going to hit you with, I don't know, what is that, a tortellini? No, not a tortellini. A provolone, that's what it is. As I age, I find that I just put in a word that has the right sort of syllable count.
I know, and the weird thing is you're only 53, and there's people complaining about people who are much, much older than you. So this is something that happens to people of all ages. So I think we should just pass on that stuff and just move on.
The memory is a tricksy thing. But Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 is, in my eyes, the superior movie of the original trilogy. Not just because of the presence of Nash or, the presence of Frank Welker, 2 of my favorite performers in the known universe. Not just because of, the presence of Corey Feldman, who of the Coreys is definitely in my top 2. It really is a solid action movie. And if you can kind of take a step back from some of the goofier aspects of it and the fact that, these guys are doing this in rubber turtle suits, it's an amazing achievement because every one of the turtles has fully animated faces, thanks to the Henson Creature Shop, I think. And you have all of these live action fight sequences. You're a big believer in those practical effects. Nearly all of this movie is done practical effects. It's a $25 million flick in 1990, which just, even then, that's like, it's kind of some money, but it's not a whole lot of money. It's not like a scramptillion money. But more importantly, it really does go ninja, go. Yes, Robert Van Winkle is in it, and it is an embarrassing period piece. But also, for those of us who were there in 1990, I think maybe we do need to have ourselves remembered. We need to be told this is how embarrassing you were for all of them making fun of people, Fats Domino with his jelly roll haircut, making fun of hippies and their big legs. You look at Vanilla Ice. We thought that was cool and were
who
willing
thought
to
that was
imitate
cool?
that.
I certainly didn't.
You had that haircut
Nope,
when we met.
I had that haircut way before Vanilla Ice ever showed up on the scene. Vanilla
Oh,
Ice
okay. So
copied me. So
you were an
there you go.
early hipster.
I
My
am a
bad.
very early hipster. Hey, speaking of hipsters, here's a movie that barely made its budget, but is a very solid entry into comic book adaptations. I think the main reason why this movie did not do well, as people thought it might, was that the previous version of this movie was horrible. The other thing is, I think at the time people couldn't believe that there's a guy running around, a big name actor, who was running around and wouldn't take his helmet off during the entire movie. And I'm talking about the movie Dread from whatever year it was, 2012.
Well,
Yeah, 2012. And it is got Carl Urban as Dredd, as Judge Dredd. And that is one of the coolest things that I like about, I think you got to respect an actor when they will commit to, yeah, I'm never going to take this helmet off, or if it is, you're going to see me from behind, because I want to make sure that I'm staying in this character as much as possible. That's what I would have said in the first season of Mandalorian too, is that was the best part about that, is he never took off his helmet until he did. But I really think Dredd as an action movie is really cool. It is, one of the blocks has been locked down, and Judge Dredd has to make it to the top of the tower in order to take out one of the some drug that they're using, and they have to take out the dealers of that. And it's just floor by floor, nonstop action. It is intense. It's over the top. It is crazy, and that is why Dredd from 2012 is my number 5.
nice.
What do you got for number 4?
I think Carl is Australian, and as an Australian, he understands the importance of British comic books. My number 4 is a movie that I was very disappointed at, not the response of the general universe, but the response of the people that I consider sort of my fellow comic book fans. And they're even now, but at the time especially, there was a particularly toxic sort of voice. I consider them squeaky wheels. And when Birds of Prey, ampersand,
Oh yeah, that's a good movie.
Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn came out in 2020, there was this huge blowback. And I didn't really understand why, because it's ostensibly part of the DC extended universe, which before this movie was kind of awful. And I just cannot watch Man of Steel. I can barely tolerate the original cut of Justice League, and I've never had 4 hours and the desire to poke myself in the eye repeatedly. So I haven't seen the rematch, but I did see Harley Quinn Adventures, Birds of Prey, and the Fantabulous Emancipation of Harley Quinn, and I came to 2 realizations. One, people didn't sit and give this movie a chance because it does have things in it that are absolutely ridiculous. Mary Elizabeth Winstead is in this playing Helena Bertinelli, the Huntress. Her husband now, I don't know if she was her husband then. Her husband, Obi-Wan Kenobi, young Obi-Wan, is playing Black Mask in this. And there is an action sequence that takes place within the GCPD where Harley has come in. She's getting ready to kill someone, but she has to fight her way through the Gotham City Police Department. So she walks in with a grenade launcher full of sparkles. Basically, it's just this glitter grenade launcher started this huge fight. And at a certain point during the fight, she ends up in an evidence room. The cops start shooting it up. She's hiding behind a massive mound of cocaine. They shoot the cocaine into the air. You see Margot Robbie take a big breath. And then the next 5 minutes is just unparalleled craziness of a coke-addled Harley Quinn. And the really impressive part is how much of her own stunts are actually done by Margot Robbie. throughout the whole sequence. But as an action movie, it's phenomenal. There's a sequence with a chase, a car and a motorcycle chase, and the motorcycle is dragging Harley Quinn on rollerblades. There is a fight sequence where it's just terrible and awful. And finally, somebody does the thing that I've always wanted to see in comics, where it's boom, 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 we are cops, boom, 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 we are criminals, boom, boom, boom. And all of this nonsense that I expect is going to be a long De Niro shootout. And then Black Canary just steps forward and blows the whole mess all to heck. And I love that escalation of here's a superpower in the midst of your silly, silly gunfight. So if you've never seen it, be aware that if you're the kind of person who was annoyed at the fact that it is a female movie with female director and a mostly female cast, not for you. Also, feel free to eat a bug. Now, if you hated the movie and you saw it, okay, that's great. But I honestly feel like not enough people gave this a chance. If for no other reason than there's an entire fight chase sequence about a breakfast sandwich.
Yeah, that in the opening, that's great. Yeah, no, this is a great movie, and it did fine. It did better than expected. I mean, it had a budget of $100 million. It made $200 million worldwide at the box office, so it doubled its budget, covered its marketing. So you could say that it broke even. I think the reason why you may be thinking that not a lot of people saw it was, yes, there was a contingent of people that were like, ooh, girls. But the other thing is you have to remember that this movie opened in January, February of 2020. And so this was probably one of the last times that people were able to go and see a movie before everything shut down, 2 months later. So I did not get to see this in the movie theater because of just things going on in life. But as soon as it dropped on, I think at the time I was still on HBO Max. When it was still on Max, I watched it and I thought it was a really, really good movie. And it is a good action movie. And it did, of course, allow them to go and do the better Suicide Squad movie, kind of based on this same energy from this movie. So yeah, no, that's a good pick. But yeah, you don't hear a lot of people talking about it, mainly because, everything has changed. The world has changed, Matthew, and we can never do anything the same. Hey, speaking of things that are completely different, let's get to my number 4. My number 4 is, again, one that got a lot of attention once it came out on streaming services, specifically Netflix is, I think, where I saw it, because I was just blown away by this movie just because of the over-the-top action sequences. This is an Indonesian film. It's directed by Gareth Evans, and it is the story of these Indonesian police officers who have to go into this overcrowded apartment building, and they all get locked in, and they have to make it to the top in order to take out this drug dealer and all of his people. And it's basically the minute that they get into this building, it's nonstop action. It is nonstop killing. It is nonstop stunts. It is just over the top. And if you're thinking, Stephen, didn't you just use that same description to talk about Dredd? Yes, I did. And so many people compare these two films and say, oh, certainly Dredd, which came out in 2012, certainly just ripped off the idea from this international film, The Raid, that came out before it. I would say maybe, but I think more realistically, the plot developed through the same kind of thing that brought us Sudden Impact and whatever the other asteroid movies were that all came out at the same time. The Raid, The Redemption, came out in 2012 or 2011. So it only came out less than a year. And there's no way that the Dredd movie was done in under that amount of time to just say, hey, we're going to just steal this idea and do something else with it. But if you want a harder, scarier, more visceral, one of those that will make you grab your groin and say, ouch, many times, that will make you wince in pain, that will make you scream, oh God, then you should really check out The Raid. I feel like it's underrated, even though a lot of people found it in streaming. They didn't see it in the theater, but it is a very, very good movie. And that is why The Raid Redemption is at my number 4. We're going to take a quick break.
Is that something I want?
Is it something that you want?
No.
It depends on how over the top you like your violence. I would not say that this is gore, but like, if you are someone that doesn't like to see somebody's leg go the wrong direction at the knee, then this is probably not a film for you. If you're okay
I really
with
enjoyed the story of Ricky.
the story of Ricky,
That's the one where the guy crushes another guy's head on panel. It was the closing sequence of Craig Kilborn's Daily Show for a couple of years.
oh, okay.
Just
Well, then if that is something that you like, if you're fine with watching scanners and somebody's head blowing up on screen, even though you can tell it's fake, The Raid is going to be just a nonstop thrill ride. So. Thanks so much, everybody, for checking us out. And if you want even more fun, be sure to check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/major spoilers. That's where you can go to get all of the fun, all of the action, and even more fun and shenanigans that we put out. $5 a month. That's all we're asking. You get access to literally 15 years of bonus material that you can't hear anywhere else. Patreon.com/major spoilers. Okay, we are into our top 3, Matthew. Top 3 underrated action movies. What do you have?
A little background on this one, because are you familiar with the actress Mary Lou Henner?
Yeah, of course. Who isn't?
Actress, beautiful lady. She has.
Now talk about somebody who does not have memory issues. She's got a mind that remembers. She's one of those what are they called? The didactic people that they can remember every single thing that ever happened in their entire life. Of course, I remember Mary Lou Henner. Hey, wait a minute. Maybe I got the same power she does.
You don't. Trust me.
I bet I do.
I bet you don't.
Ask me what I had for lunch today.
Ask me the difference between Night Girl and Shadowlass. Okay, so what Mary Lou has.
See, one is blue, and the other one's powers only work at night.
I'm going to slap you. Mary Lou Henner has what's called highly superior autobiographical memory. Now, you will not let me get away with saying that I'm the smartest person on the podcast, and I don't actually believe that.
No.
But more importantly, I believe this because for the last 15 years, you've had me on these shows highly in part of the fact that I remember things. It is not highly superior autobiographical memory, but I have a very good memory. I don't try to hold a grudge, which is why when I tell you
that you hold a grudge.
No, in August of 2015, in a previous episode of Top 5 on the Major Spoilers Podcast Network, my number 3 movie.
Oh, you dropped out. Oh, no. Oh, no. Matthew dropped out, ladies and gentlemen. This is horrible. Right at his number 3. Oh, no. We're just going to have to move on. Oh, man. Oh, Matthew's back. Oh, and he's gone again. That's some karma right there, ladies and gentlemen. That is some karma.
Okay, where was
I? You were getting some karmic retribution.
I was getting some karmic retribution. It was March of 2015. It was a year unlike any other, and we had a topic: top 5 movies that are so bad they're awesome. The bad part offended me. It did.
No, you can have bad movies that are really good.
My number 3, The Warriors, is not a bad movie. Not a good movie.
It's not a good movie.
It's not a bad movie. It is, however, a really fun and underrated action.
Who doesn't love a good action movie? I knew The Warriors was going to be on your list. I honestly thought it was going to be up much higher.
Well, that's the thing. There's a couple that I was arguing about that kind of outranked it, but Walter Hill had a killer couple of years. He did The Warriors and then he did Streets of Fire. But The Warriors basically is, I know, right? It's a retelling of the Anabasis, which is the story of a bunch of soldiers out of their home territory making their way back across Greece. And instead of Greece, say Manhattan Island. And you start with 9 warriors at the very, very tip of Manhattan Island. And then they have to travel all the way across the island to get home to Coney Island. And it's really, really well done. There's a lot of set pieces. There's one in particular where one of the warriors gets thrown in front of a subway train. So really well done effect for 3 reasons. One, you can't just push somebody right in front of a subway train.
I mean, you can. It's called murder, though.
Well, right. And 2, the actor in question was actually no longer part of the production at the time his character was killed. Essentially, that character and the director, or rather that actor and the director, had a disagreement, and so he was going to have a an actually a larger part in the film, including a romance that went to one of the other characters. But instead, he was thrown in front of a train, and it ends up being really amazing because 9 warriors leave and only 5 come home. And so you get to the end of the film, or is it 6? I don't know. You get to the end of the film, and these few warriors get all the way back, and they're like, "Oh man, what are we going to do?" And then, of course, David Patrick Kelly shows up driving a hearse, and it's bad. But even the parts of it that are slow, and I have to admit that the final fight is weird and slow, but it's very measured and intentionally so. And of course, it does end with the amazing sight of like 2,000 people wearing matching suits standing on the beach and dealing with the problem for the Warriors. But it's got the action that you need. It's got a little bit of 1979. It's got some homophobia, which, that's not so good. And it does have a really amazing performance by a super, super, super young James Remar, who even at the age of 19 still had this voice right here. So if you want to see what people looked like when they were a teenager, definitely you should check out.
If you want to see what people in 1970s look like when they were teenagers, here's a hint. They all look like they were 65. So there you go.
And some
also,
of them wore kabuki music makeup and carried a baseball bat.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Here's a little known fact. If we ever get to play my Dresden Files game, there is an homage to the Warriors built into that game.
Ooh, I want to play a warrior now.
But probably never get to that. Why? Because we need more patrons. Patreon.com/major spoilers. Listen, this is, I think, part of the problem with people finding the Birds of Prey movie was because they changed the title of the movie after it was released. And of course, Warner Brothers would say, "Oh no, we would never do something like that." Of course, they certainly would. That's the same problem that everyone had with my number 3 movie, Edge of Tomorrow. What the heck does that even mean? It's got Tom Cruise in a sci-fi movie. What does that even mean? And so then they went back and they were like, nobody is getting this because they don't understand the title. Let's just call it Live, Die, Repeat. And it is a fantastic loop action movie. And again, people found this after it was released in theaters, after it went to other venues. But Live, Die, Repeat is this crazy movie where this kind of stuck on himself military PR guy does something that finds him on the front lines of an alien invasion, and he is totally unequipped to deal with actual combat. He dies within minutes of landing on the shores, and then he wakes back up 4 days or 3 days or however long it was beforehand. And he keeps dying in all these different ways. And pretty soon he starts remembering, hey, there's a pattern. This happens, and I do this, and then this happens. And it is probably one of the best video game movies out there, Matthew, because it's like you're going back to that save point, or you're doing a roguelike and you're running through and you die and you just go back and start it all over again to see how far you can go. It is a great sci-fi time loop action movie. And if you haven't seen it, you really do deserve to see it by now. I think now that everyone knows it as Live, Die, Repeat, people are buying into it more and more. And so I think a lot of people have seen it, but at the time it was definitely an underrated action movie.
Nice.
Which brings us to our number 2s.
Our number 2s. This was so difficult for me. So difficult because on the one hand, I had a movie that I love with all my heart that I don't know if it was as underrated, but is a better action movie. But then I had another movie that I love with all of my heart that is definitely an action movie and mostly underrated. So I kind of had to go with my gut. And my gut said, my number 2 is a movie from our childhood. And it gave all of us.
Well, technically, Warriors is a movie from our childhood, too. So,
is it necessary?
Yes, it is. But please go on.
Okay. So here's the deal. Stephen and I are from an era where when movies or on television, they didn't make a clean cut. So the people would go in and they would hire usually Alan Reed to go in and voice over. And any time a character said something rude, you would hear Alan Reed, the voice of Fred Flintstone, say "scumbum." And so I didn't realize that there was any cursing in my number two, Smokey and the Bandit, until I watched it with my child when they were about 8. But Smokey and the Bandit is the first film directed by Hal Needham, and Hal Needham started as a stuntman. And so his movies, Cannonball Run, Stroker Ace, Hooper, Smokey and the Bandit, have huge stunt presences, but more importantly, are often about the stunts themselves. Smokey and the Bandit is about racing a Trans Am and an 18-wheeler from Texas all the way back to Atlanta, Georgia, in I think 48 hours.
Yeah, something
To
like
get
that.
at the time. At the time, it was illegal to ship Coors beer west of, I think west of Texas. I don't remember, but west of the Mississippi or east of the Mississippi, towards Georgia, whichever direction that is. So the movie at that point has a very simple, very cool hook, and then it just turns into this running chase sequence, which should be boring, except for the chases being done by Burt Reynolds at his absolute most charismatic. And Jerry Reed, who I would literally listen to Jerry Reed read the Snow Book. The Snow Book? No. If I would listen to Jerry Reed read the Phone Book, because that man is hilarious. And the two of them are trying to outrun Jackie Gleason, whose catchphrase, at least if you saw it on NBC in the 80s, was scumbum. And throughout the whole film, we have chases and jumps and bizarre moments that don't quite make sense, not as many as the later movies, where the laws of physics become more the suggestions of physics. But this one at least has the one of the greatest moments of all time, where Cletus, played by Jerry Reed at the end, is driving and the bandit has given up. He's like, "We're not going to make it. We're going to give up. You just keep driving because nobody knows who Cletus Snow even is." And Cletus gets this look on his face. He's like, "Oh, they don't. Well, we'll just introduce him to the boy." And then we get the sequence of the 18-wheeler just ramming through blockades of police cars. I think until the Blues Brothers, this may have been the Smashin' Police Car record movie. If you've never seen it, sit down and watch it. Watch it with an 8-year-old. It's 96 minutes of goofy 70s nonsense. Unfortunately, it too has a little bit of homophobia and misogyny in it, which does not age well. The only thing that I can tell you about that is it is the villains. So, you know, that's random. But good movie if you just want to sit and watch things kind of go for about an hour and a half.
Yeah, I think you're missing out on one of the best parts about Smokey and the Bandit is Sally Field as the love interest. And I was waiting for you to mention her name. You didn't mention it once.
Hot Sally Field. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
See,
I don't think Sally Field ever aged. She's
is wonderful. She is a wonderful actress in this film.
I think teaming her with Burt Reynolds in this was a brilliant move, even though their budget was like trimmed to almost nothing when the production began. The fact that they were able to get Jerry Reed, Sally Field, and Jackie Gleason. The budget was originally supposed to be $5.3 million. But the day that they started production, the studio came and said, "Hey, we're trimming your budget by $1 million." And $1 million of the budget already went to Burt Reynolds. And so they had to do this film for like $3 million to do this. Also, clarification on the Coors beer thing. The reason why you couldn't get Coors beer east of Texas is because there was no stabilizer or preservative in the Coors beer. And so it would spoil if it wasn't getting constant refrigeration. And of course, refrigerator trucks were, long haul refrigerator trucks were not a super common thing back in the 70s, which is why they had to get the beer from Texas to Georgia in 24 hours. So, there you go. Yeah, it's a fun movie. It is a fun movie. Watch it for the jumps. And then after you watch that movie, ask yourself, hey, what year did the Dukes of Hazzard come out? And you will see, oh, that came out only just 2 years after Smokey and the Bandit, a movie that was made for $4 million and made $127 million in 1977. Yeah, it would make sense that we would want to do something called The Dukes of Hazzard about moonshiners in the hills of Atlanta going around and doing stuff. Yeah. Interesting. Just an interesting observation.
And then, if you want to get really deep in the weeds, go watch the movie Moonrunners, which ostensibly predates The Dukes of Hazzard, and realize that The Dukes of Hazzard is nothing like that movie, but it's an awful lot like this one.
And then after you've seen all of that, you may be tempted to watch Smokey and the Bandit 2.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Do it.
No, don't do it.
It's got Dom DeLuise and an elephant.
Yeah, no, don't do it.
Now, do not, under any circumstances, watch Smokey and the Bandit 3. There is no amount of Colleen Camp.
I think you should just leave it. I think you should just leave it at Smokey and the Bandit and just say, what a pitch perfect movie that never needed a sequel after that.
See, pitch perfect is an interesting word to use here because Pitch Perfect 2 was also terrible. But
yeah,
Smokey and the Bandit 2 gives you a lot more Sally Field. So if you love your Sally Field, Smokey 2 is the way to go. Also,
another movie she did in the 70s that I like her in a lot more.
It does give you Jackie Field. Jackie Field? No, Jackie Gleason. My God, am I even fit for office? No, it gives you Jackie Gleason in 3 roles. Not just Buford, but his identical cousins, too. Mm-hmm. One of whom is Canadian, and one of whom is, I don't remember where he's from. We're going to say France. I don't know.
Yeah, let's say that. Anyway, my number 2 movie. So I will tell you that my number 2 and my number 1 are from the same director. And for whatever reason, Shane Black just never seems to crack it, although he was the person who wrote and sold the Lethal Weapon movie to Hollywood, the very first one, and made a crap ton of money off of that. And he became like, I think if I remember correctly, that the Lethal Weapon sold for $1 million, and it was the first time a movie script had ever sold for $1 million. And he was signed on to help produce this. And that kind of started his career. But ever since then, Shane Black has not had, I mean, he's had successes, but he just hasn't had phenomenal blow you out of the seat box office budget successes, which is weird because when you go back to 2005 and you look at a little Christmas movie called Kiss Kiss Bang Bang with Robert Downey Jr., Matthew's favorite actor of all time, Val Kilmer, you have to wonder, how did this buddy cop movie not work? I'll tell you the answer. It's because it's 2005 and no longer 1985. But Kiss Kiss Bang Bang
the
tells
Adventures of Iceman and Iron Man. Come on.
I know, right? Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, if you've never seen it, does a hard-boiled, tongue-in-cheek action movie where Robert Downey Jr. plays a criminal who needs to get the heck out of town because he's just tried to rob a place on Christmas Eve. He unintentionally walks into a casting audition and people are like, oh my God, this guy is great. Let's get him out into the world to play this cop. And so they bring him out to Hollywood. It's a big deal for him. And he is hooked up with Val Kilmer, an actual police officer who he is supposed to shadow to find out how to make this character work, how to make his character that he's supposed to play in this movie work. And through fate and shenanigans and other things, they find themselves kind of discovering, what is it? I'm guessing it's a drug ring. I forgot. It's been a couple of years since I've seen it. But it is so good. I don't know if you've seen this movie, Matthew, but for years I was like, people were like, oh yeah, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, it's so good, but it's horrible. It was like only made $15 million at the box office on a budget of $15 million. And I'm like, really? Everyone says it's horrible. But then there's a few like super deep movie nerds that I really respect. And I listen to them talk about Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I'm like, okay, now I have to watch this movie. And I loved it. It is so good that I think everybody should see this flick. It's what year did Iron Man came out? 2006 or something like that?
2008.
2008. So this is right
Yep.
before Robert Downey Jr. has his big reboot. And I think that if you want to see pre Iron Man Robert Downey Jr. in what could have been, if had it been for Iron Man, could have been his last acting role, this is the movie
Right.
that you need to go and see. Right. And you can get, it's easily accessible, but Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is my number 2 because it has got Val Kilmer again, right at the peak of his prime before he started running into problems. What does he have? Was it cancer? Is that what he has? Like mouth cancer or
I
throat
believe
cancer?
that he has a throat cancer, and they've had to do some.
Oh yeah,
So I
throat
don't know if
cancer.
they removed anything, but his larynx does not work the same way as it
Yeah.
used to.
Yeah. So if you want to kind of see him right before that happened, then you need to see Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Just a great combination pairing between these two. And had this movie been as successful as I think Hollywood hoped it would be, even though they only gave it a $15 million budget. But to be fair, there's not that much big stuff that goes on except for explosions and car chases and all of that stuff. I have a feeling that whatever executive, Joel Silver or whoever, convinced the studios, Warner Brothers again. I think they tried to convince them that this was going to be their next Lethal Weapon franchise. And when it just fell flat on its face, that was it. But definitely go see Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Super underrated action flick. All right, we have reached the top of the charts, our number 1s. Matthew, what do you have for number 1?
I argued and argued, and I actually agonized. A lot of times I do agonize about top 5, but I agonized about whether my number 1 film even counts as an underrated movie until I thought about just the simple language, the meaning, the verbiage of that word underrated. A lot of people will tell you that this is a really wonderful movie. It's a really great action piece. It is a very, very moving film for a number of reasons. One of the, I think, best films of the 1990s. And I don't, necessarily think in those terms. And it is definitely a memorable film because of the loss of the lead actor during the production. But no matter how much you esteem The Crow from 1994, you have underrated this movie because as an action movie, it never, ever stops. We start the movie running across rooftops, and then they have this sequence where this character is running down a hallway. Part of it may actually not be Brandon Lee. I believe it was one of the earliest uses of CGI to create more footage that had not been recorded at the time of Brandon Lee's death. He was actually killed during the filming of the movie. But then things start going, and it's basically a revenge plot movie. It has a lot in common with the Death Wish movies. It has a lot in common with Avenging Angel. But what it has that those movies don't, with all apologies to Charles Bronson, is an incredibly charismatic lead actor. And he's doing it all himself. Probably the movie moment that really sells it for me is he walks into this big empty room, and at one end is a table full of gangsters, and he just saunters across the room, puts a hand on the table, flips his leg up, lands in a sitting position, and faces them all and points and says, "All I want is him." And then death follows, just guns blazing, swords everywhere, people impaled, guys flying through windows. And through it all, Brandon Lee is just this incredibly magnetic presence at the middle of the whole thing. And you cannot look away from the actor or the character. And I have to tell you, if you've never seen The Crow, and I don't usually do this with my movies because a lot of times I know my movies are going to be, sometimes I feel like they're an acquired taste. The Crow is a genuinely good film. It is well done, it is well put together, and it was finished to try and honor Brandon's performance. And I'm glad that they did. If you haven't seen it, go see it right now.
Yeah, they're doing a remake. They're going to do a remake of that. They're working on that right now. I forget when that
I'm a
comes
little
out.
scared.
When does the new The Crow, I think you have to type in the
Come
Crow
out.
movie, right? August
Yeah.
23rd, next month, Matthew. August 23rd, the new Crow movie arrives in theaters.
Mhm.
And it stars, this would be a good time for the producers of The Crow or the production company. There's so many of them listed here, but distributed by Lionsgate. Lionsgate now would have been a perfect time for you to come over to Major Spoilers and said, hey, we want to do a promotion where you guys talk about our upcoming movie, The Crow. And I would have said, oh, I know Matthew like the back of my hand. We should, oh God, what is that? I should go get that taken care of. I should.
That's a raisin, Stephen. You should not be eating trail mix during the show.
Then I would say, oh yeah, Matthew's going to talk about The Crow in an upcoming underrated action movie. So this one stars. Who's in this one? Bill Skarsgård. Isn't he like Everybody Floats Down Here, Timmy? Isn't that him?
He was the It, and then he was also the villain of John Wick 4, the Marquis de Mercury.
I don't know who FKA Twigs is.
Formerly known as Twigs, she is a singer and a dancer. She's absolutely gorgeous. I have not seen her act. I've only seen her sing because my kid is, 20-ish.
Danny Houston is also. Yep. So I think those are your three. So yeah, if you guys want to go see that, let Lionsgate know you got tapped into it by listening to the Top 5 podcast. We're not getting any money out of this. What the hell am I talking about? The Crow movie 2024. Instead, I'm going to talk about my number one. Again, another Shane Black movie that you would think that Shane Black would say, hey, maybe I should go try something different. This buddy cop thing never seems to work. So in 2016, Shane Black teamed up with Russell Crowe and Ryan Gosling and said, hey guys, how about we do a buddy detective movie? And it's The Nice Guys. This movie is a period piece set in 1977 Los Angeles, and they did some incredible special effects to make the city look like it did in the 1970s, like all the smog, all the signage, all the stuff that's in there. It is amazing what they did to make Los Angeles look like it did in the 1970s. But the premise is a porn star dies, and one of the detectives, Ryan Gosling's character, is hired to find out if she's really dead. And of course, because Ryan Gosling is kind of a shystery kind of a detective, he quickly gets in the crosshairs of Russell Crowe's detective, who is kind of like not really a detective, but more of a hired muscle. And the two of them find themselves in the middle of this scandal that leads to a giant revelation about the automotive industry. And of course, it ends with, giant explosions and fist fights. But if you've ever seen Ryan Gosling, he's a funny guy. If I were to say underrated actors, I would probably put Ryan Gosling down as an underrated action.
Really subtle.
Yeah, I would put him down as an underrated comedy action star, because I don't think enough people give Ryan Gosling credit for his acting chops. And even Russell Crowe is funny in this movie. And I just adore this. When I saw that it was coming out, I love the vibe of the 1970s, early 80s in movies. I like that time period in movies. And I was like the one of 5 people in the theater on the debut night of this movie.
Wow.
And I loved the heck out of it. It's unfortunate, though, because a budget of only $50 million, it only made $62 million, and not many people got to see it. But again, it's out on digital. I think it's on some of the streaming services right now. So if you're on the Netflix or a Hulu or something like that, you should take the time.
Recently on one of my streaming. But
yeah, you should take the time and watch
the one you don't pay for anymore.
Well, there's several of them I don't pay for anymore, but it's got a bunch of those. Hey, it's that guy. It's got Kim Basinger in it. Which was really surprising. That was one of the draws, was Kim Basinger hasn't been in movies in years. And now, or the last time she was in a movie was with Russell Crowe, I believe, LA Confidential. And so that was one of the big draws to bring this back. It's got Robert Downey Jr. in it again. It's got
Keith David.
Oh yeah, Keith David is in there as a great bad guy. Now, I will say that this is not a movie for kids. Even though there is a young actress in it she does a great job. I forget what her name is. Holly is the character that she plays. She's great, but I did tell you at the beginning, it starts with the death of a porn star. So there is the porn industry of the 1970s plays heavily into the plot of this. So there is plenty of nudity and sex comments and crude language throughout the piece, but it is a brilliant piece of buddy cop stuff. And I just wish at the very end, it's clear that they so want to make a sequel to this. And then there was not the interest from the audience. And that is such a shame because it is great. It won the AARP Annual Movies for Grown-Ups Award for Best Buddy Picture. It won the Houston Film Critics Society Best Picture in 2017, and it won the San Diego Film Critics Society Best Comedic Performance by Ryan Gosling. He won for that one in 2016. So the next time you see it up there, Matthew, you just take the time and say, here's 2 hours of my life I'm never going to get back, but it's going to be a rip roaring time. And you're going to see some of the best slapstick out of Ryan Gosling ever. He does a great Lou Costello bit at one point. He does a great Three Stooges bit at one point. It's great. It's just perfect. So there you go. That is my number one, The Nice Guys, from Shane Black.
I always confuse it with The Other Guys that stars Will Ferrell and Marky Mark, the hamburger guy.
No,
which is a different movie.
I think you're thinking of The Others is a movie with Nicole Kidman in it, where it turns out she's the ghost. And yeah,
spoilers.
It's a movie from 2001. It's a 20-plus-year-old movie.
It's actually kind of cool because it starts with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Samuel L. Jackson.
Oh, wait.
And then they both die. And then it's like, oh, no. And then Will Ferrell and Marky Mark
thinking of something else.
They're like, huh.
What is that Dwayne Johnson movie where he plays like this roided out bodybuilder who...
I think that's all of them. Oh, I think you're thinking of Get Shorty.
No. It's not Get Shorty.
The follow-up to Get Shorty.
No, this is based on like a real life events movie. I'm going to see if I can find it really quick because it's definitely worth checking out.
Pain and Gain.
That's it. Pain and Gain. It is. That is a weird movie. It's not really much of an action movie. It
has Marky Mark in it.
Yeah, that's why when you said that, I was like, oh, I know this movie. But yeah, that is a weird movie based on actual events, and it's got. If you want to see Dwayne Johnson. So Dwayne Johnson has become an actor who is Dwayne Johnson in the movies, right? There are very specific things that have to happen in a Dwayne Johnson movie for a Dwayne Johnson to be in it. This is
Johnson is
like, he can't lose any fights, nothing bad can happen to him, a lot of those kinds of things. Pain and Gain is a movie before he became Dwayne Johnson, the actor. And it is quirky. It's weird. I think he gets his thumb blown off in the movie. I think he's the one that gets his thumb blown off. But yeah, go check that one out too. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Our top 5 underrated action movies. What do you have on your list? Well, there's a couple of ways that you can do this. You can head over to our Discord server. You can join our Discord server absolutely free. It costs nothing to join. Again, in this economy, when someone says you can get something for free, you go do it. Okay, so you can join the Discord server absolutely free. We have a channel specifically for the Top 5 podcast, and you can go in there and you can comment on our lists and you can share your lists. And what's great, the Discord people have figured out how to do the spoiler tags in their top 5s. Ooh. So you'll go into the top 5 and like, I don't know, like Texura or somebody will say, hey, here's my number 5. And then it's all blacked out and you have to click on the blackout to see it. So it's not spoiled for you. It's really great. And why do they do this? Because they know that everybody loves a list.
This podcast is copyright 2024 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.